Modern boss Gu Junshi, once dressed as a married peasant woman, married to a petite man with amnesia who was abducted and sold into the village. That night, I dreamt that my weak and helpless little husband was actually Long Aotian, the future cultivator of the cultivation world, and she was just his ex-wife who had been killed by the cannon fodder. There was no reason to make wedding clothes for others, so she snatched away their cultivation secrets and started to preach to the strong General Xiaojiao for killing her husband. No one expected that this cannon fodder ex-wife would snatch Long Aotian's script from the beginning and eventually become the biggest villainous boss. As Tian Dao watched the plot of the collapse, she waved her hand and returned time and time again to the eve of her husband's murder, trapped in the cycle of reincarnation. Until she discovered the last small line of the spell: to cross the tribulation and inquire about one's heart, one must first enter the path of love in order to break through the path of ruthlessness. Gu Junshi. Dare you kill me for free in front of me? Jiao Fu. Did I live to influence your performance? On how to transform the reborn little Jiaofu into a vengeful diseased Jiaofu, it only requires a repeated process of being killed. Keywords of the novel. Welcome to the Shura realm without a pop-up window after leaving the sick girl behind. Welcome to the Shura realm after leaving the sick girl behind. Download the complete TXT collection, and welcome to the latest chapters of the Shura realm after leaving the sick girl behind. Chapter 1. The beginning of reincarnation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 2. President Ba and Jiao Fu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. President Ba and Jiao Fu. The heavy rain outside today is pouring heavily. On the rubble and on the lush fields, a layer of white mist splashes up, like a misty white veil. As dusk fell in the distance, it was pitch black. The young man, carrying a hoe, pushed open the fence yard and returned. Small puddles had accumulated under the eaves. He hung his soaked bamboo hat and raincoat on the earthen wall, plucked his wet forehead, and his pink cheeks showed the color of the water after work. His eyes were clean and clear as if washed with water. There was only a dimly lit oil lamp indoors. Seeing his wife standing by the window watching the rain, Gu Junshi, dressed as Gu Yi, with the same face and body, but his temperament and posture had undergone significant changes from before. The noble spirit nurtured by Gu Junshi's past life of gold and jade, even wearing a cheap and patchy green cloth skirt, meticulously combed smooth silk ink hair with a simple pear branch hairpin, with eyes and lips red, is like a beautiful moon, with extraordinary demeanor. After losing his memory, the petite husband always felt ashamed when facing such a wife, and he often couldn't understand what she was thinking when she remained silent. But when his gloomy gaze inadvertently swept towards her belly, yet his face was sweet and shy. He thought to himself, there should be some movement these days. He thinks he has been working tirelessly all night, working harder than a cow. I'm back. Gu Junshi turned his face, his dark and calm eyes fixed on him, staring for a while before drooping again. Master Gu, my name is. Due to the rain outside, the water was shrouded in mist, and there was only a dim oil lamp in the corner of the house. She stood by the window, half of her face exposed in the darkness of the light, like a Buddha's light and a devil's cold. Xiaojiao was slightly surprised and said, "Wife, isn't wife called Gu Yi?" She walked towards him and said, "Gu Yi was called by someone else, and Junshi is my true name." The wooden door behind Jiaofu was creaking and shaking with a gust of strong wind, and a chill rushed into his feet. The flames flickered violently, and the shadow under her feet twisted and rampaged like an uncontrollable demon. He finally felt something amiss in the atmosphere. In the flickering light, he hesitated anxiously and said, "Why did you suddenly say this?" Gu Junlin paused, her pupils extremely black, but her lips pale. She had just stood by the window, with the cold wind brushing her face and her hair soaked in some rain and mist. Her whole body had a kind of cool indifference that was so beautiful that it was chilling to the bone. "Because there's no time left. Remember this name, if there's an afterlife, don't look for the wrong person." Suddenly, severe abdominal pain hit, and he finally realized something. His eyes were shattered with disbelief and pain, and he tightly grasped her wrist, sliding down to his knees. Why? She didn't explain, using only a pair of cold hands to gently caress his tearful eyelids, gently and meticulously wiping them, as if soothing or offering sacrifices, but her eyes remained calm as if the moonlight was slightly cool. He collapsed into a pool of blood with empty and lifeless eyes, unable to understand why she wanted to kill him until death. Master Gu stood up and everything returned to that day. Pod of the window lattice and the loosely closed wooden door were knocked with a clanging sound by the strong wind outside, and the sky became dim. It started pouring rain outside. Crunch. The person who had died for over 200 years came back to life again. After returning home, he hung a bamboo hat and raincoat under the eaves. When he saw that there were no lights in the house and thought his wife was resting, he unknowingly pushed the door in, and everything gradually overlapped with her vague memories. What if we start over again? Her choice never changes. Gu Junshi sat by the bed with his eyes lowered and an indifferent smile on his face. The damp cold wind blowing from the door blew through the blue curtain blocking the bed. Little Jiao was preparing to search for a fire and light a lamp when he suddenly felt a silhouette approaching behind him. As soon as he turned his head, a snowy cold light flashed past. Pup, why? He fell to the ground, his gaze fixed like that of a wooden puppet, facing Gu Junshi's misty and playful eyes. I also want to know why. Opening his eyes again, Gu Junshi found himself wearing it again. She feels like she's trapped in a closed loop, with no way out forever. Sure enough, everything is related to this little coquettish man of unknown origin, otherwise why is it this day? This time, she opened the door in advance and leaned against the door, watching the young man who had returned from the muddy countryside path in the rain. The heavy rain and dim sky prevented him from seeing his wife under the thatched eaves. He pulled out the door fence and entered the fence yard, quickly taking off his soaked rain gear. He was dressed in a thin Wenru blue robe, with a waist as thin as a woman's, and a graceful and seductive figure. When he saw her waiting by the door, a sudden joy appeared on his face, a delicate face made of flawless jade, and his eyes were like stars. My wife. A cold chill cut through his delicate white neck, and crimson spurted out thinly. His gradually graying eyes flashed with disbelief and grief. How many times is this? When Gu Junshi returned to this day, the repetitive script had numbed her. She has tried many ways to prevent time from going back, but none of them have been effective. So this time she wasn't in a hurry to take action. She recalled repairing the immortal path time and time again before, only to find that no matter how she modified and changed each time, she still couldn't break through the void and soar, as if she was always one step away from the most crucial thing. She had already spent more than 1,000 years repeating the tedious years, and in the end, she guessed that there might be a problem with her initial practice of the great way of merciless technique. So this time, she rediscovered the blood-stained bundle and found the book. This time, she looked at it very carefully, word by word, and finally saw an overlooked small line of text at the corner of a page. Those who practice the merciless technique must first enter the realm of emotions, cross the tribulations and soar to the heavenly gate before they can attain enlightenment. When Gu Junshi saw this line of words, he remained silent for a long time, and finally couldn't hold his cold lips and cursed elegantly. Grass. Do you dare to believe that this dog-driven cultivation tool must enter the realm of love before killing the path of enlightenment before it counts? For thousands of years, Gu Junshi has been persistent in the matter of Feisheng. She is determined to achieve this goal and knows the reason for the failure of Feisheng all along. She begins to ponder that she has been an ambitious entrepreneur in her past and present lives, but she is not good at emotions, so how should she get in love? No, don't. Lu Jiang Fusheng sat up from the bed, trembling in her eyes and her chest constantly heaving. He panicked and touched his whole body, only to find that he was not dead. He was startled with fear. Surprisingly, he has returned. He couldn't stop trembling all over, his hands with delicate bones covering his face, his slender black and thick corners of his eyes turning red, as if crying or laughing. At this moment, he didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He couldn't remember how many times he had been killed by that ruthless woman, and his whole body was pierced. At first, he was unwilling and wanted to ask her why she was so cruel to him. But later on, he was too painful and desperate, leaving only a strong hatred to kill her. He once swore that if he could be given another chance to be reborn, he would definitely kill her first, but unfortunately, in every life, he only has the memory of being killed in the previous life before he dies. But this time, he hasn't died yet, but his memory has been restored in advance. He let go of his hand, his sticky white teeth nervously biting his nails, breathing excitedly and trembling rapidly. Kill her, this time, he will never die in her hands again, husband, the cold and spring-like female voice whispered in her ear. Lu Jiang's delicate body trembled instinctively, but a chill surged from her feet to her head. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. He of the Black Lotus. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. He of the Black Lotus. He lifted his head, and a face that shone like jade, ice, and amber light shone into his pupils. The morning light outside the window shone through the contours of her figure into the room, which was a bit harsh for him, who had always been trapped in the dark abyss and couldn't escape. She still moved his heart as usual, but it made his heart even colder. He lowered his eyelids, his red lips pursed tightly like blood, and beneath his thin and thick eyelashes, his light brown eyes were swirling with swamp spider webs. He was pinched into the flesh by his fingernails, his heart beating like a drum. Next second, she should start taking action. What should he do to avoid this death? He found that she was very skilled and agile in killing people, and this skill was by no means ordinary. With his current skills, he could not resist. What exactly did he need to do to counter-kill her? The restlessness and tension in his heart were like a tangled mess stirring up his mind. He wanted to tug at his hair, but was afraid of being noticed by her. Calm down, you must calm down. Gu Junshi was unusually silent when she saw him. For her, the past entanglements between the two had become unfamiliar and blurred over time. She didn't know him well, nor could she remember what kind of personality he should have had, and what kind of way they should have gotten along. She can only observe the other person's reaction while exploring her own understanding of the ways of marriage to handle it. Last night you came back all the way in the rain, and as soon as you arrived at your doorstep, you suddenly fainted. But what's wrong with your body? Upon hearing these words, Lu Jiangfusheng suddenly looked up. You said, it's already been one night. He looked at her in disbelief. He thought everything was just ahead of schedule, but he didn't want the repeated terrorist attacks to have easily passed. Why? Why didn't she kill him like before this time? At this moment, ecstasy, surprise, and sincere fear swept over Lu Jiangfusheng. Perhaps it was because he fainted that he managed to escape, or perhaps this time he woke up early and changed. Ha ha ha. It has changed, everything has changed. He twisted his heart and laughed wildly. Is it sick? Gu Junshi also vaguely sensed that there was something wrong with his current state. Sitting next to the bed, he reached out to touch his forehead, but saw Lu Jiangfusheng's face turn pale as if stimulated. He curled up and avoided him in panic. Is he afraid of her? Gu Junshi's hand stopped halfway, his clear eyes slightly closed, and his expression inexplicably asked, "What's wrong with you?" Lu Jiangfusheng also realized that he had overreacted. He bit his lower lip and hugged himself tightly at the head of the bed. Because his emotions were suppressed for too long, his voice was hoarse and obediently disguised, I'm afraid I'll pass on the disease to you. At this moment, one hand came over and, unlike his scorching skin, her hand was as cold as snow. Husband. A clear and warm voice, just like the call engraved in his heart during the sweetest moment. At that moment, he was extremely resentful, but his eyes turned sour. He looked at her with trembling eyelashes, his teary eyes hazy, but she gently embraced him. The fragrance from her body entered his nostrils, and his fingertips brushed his cheek, lightly pressing his head on her warm shoulder. This kind of friendly and soothing posture made Lu Jiangfusheng suddenly feel goosebumps, and he was shocked in his heart. Why does everything seem different in this rebirth? But did you have a nightmare? Don't be afraid, it's for your wife. She patted his back lightly, her movement somewhat unfamiliar, as if it was her first time doing such a thing. Indeed, in the memory of Lu Jiangfusheng, she was polite to him but also aloof and reserved, never treating him with the same care as she does now. He bit on his cheek, suppressing the reflexive spasms of his muscles. He buried his head in her arms, his nails turning pale as he gripped her collar. Under the shadow, the corners of his mouth curled up eerily, but he asked in a crying voice, "Is everything really a nightmare?" She remained silent for a moment. She had never really been afraid of anything in her life, so she wouldn't understand his sensitivity just because of a dream. "Husband." She called him. "What?" She lifted his delicate jaw and didn't overlook the tense moment when his whole body was as tense as a stone. She lowered her eyes and said, "Believe in being a wife, with me, nothing in this world can harm you." Then a kiss lightly imprinted on his forehead. He didn't understand the meaning of kissing on the forehead. When a cold and ruthless person becomes gentle, it is most deadly. Even Lu Jiangfusheng, who hates her so much at this moment, instinctively feels hot and soft in her body. His soul seemed to be torn apart by someone, half of it was an indestructible love and desire for her, and the other half was a deep-seated hatred and pain for her. Lu Jiangfusheng trembled uncontrollably throughout his body. "Scammer, scammers, 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 my wife, what should I do if the nightmare turns out to be true?" He sniffed at her breath and asked her hoarsely. Gu Junshi let out a light sigh, feeling that the patience and tenderness she had squeezed out in these 2 lifetimes were all counted towards him. "If it becomes true." She raised her eyes and smiled faintly, "Then as a wife, I will help you tear it apart. It troubles you, and I will make it disappear." Simple words are full of absolute confidence and protection. Lu Jiangfusheng turned his head to look at her in a daze, but it seemed as if he didn't know her at all. Who is this person in front of me? Is she really Gu? Who was that person who showed him no mercy before? Seeing Lu Jiangfusheng finally show her a reassuring and attached smile, her emotions finally calmed down a lot. Gu Junshi then asked him, "Last night you came back half an hour late and fainted for no reason, but what happened?" When Gu Junshi decided to start over yesterday, he noticed some differences from before, such as his late return yesterday and his strange behavior after waking up this morning. Lu Jiangfusheng never dared to underestimate Gu Junshi's sensitivity. He has been reborn countless times, but he is not sure if Gu Junshi has also been reborn. However, he knows that regardless of whether it is, he must not let her doubt him until he has the ability to fight back. So he must give all the anomalies a legitimate reason to convince her to believe. He used to be as simple as a blank sheet of paper and never knew how to act, but now it seems that some things can be taught by himself. He buried his true self and said to her innocently and sincerely, "I met a strange person on the road, he stopped me, and said many strange things to me." What kind of person is he? A lame old man who claims to be a Jiang Taoist. This is certainly not a lie. Yesterday, Lu Jiangfusheng, who had not yet regained his memory, met a strange old man on his way home. He said he shouldn't waste his life in the mortal world and that if he wanted to create another world and achieve rebirth, he would go find him. At that time, I was determined to return home like an arrow, and I wouldn't listen to this old Taoist's nonsense. Looking back now, this Jiang Taoist had never appeared during his past rebirth, and this rebirth seems to have undergone changes since he began. Jiang Taoist. Gu Jun's eyes were deep, his expression calm and unpredictable, and even a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Jiang Taoist. This person still appeared. Originally, everything was still proceeding according to the predetermined trajectory of fate. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Returning to the Novice Village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Returning to the Novice Village. Gu Junshi often wanders in a mysterious dream after practicing the heartless technique of the Great Way. The scene in the dream was true or false, both true and false, but it carried a sense of warning. Every time she woke up, everything in the dream was covered with a blurry veil that made it difficult for her to remember clearly. It wasn't until last night when she changed her mind and stopped insisting on attacking Jiao that everything in the dream revealed its full face to her. In her dream, she watched a tumultuous original plot from the perspective of God. It turned out that the young man she married was not an ordinary person, with a complicated identity and even more impressive future achievements. If she had not crossed over by chance and followed her original trajectory, Li Zheng would still have introduced the amnesiac young man who had been stranded in a foreign land to Gu Yi, who urgently needed to get married. However, the young man was arrogant and did not take a liking to the unethical Gu Yi. But Gu Yi fell in love with He Lang's petite husband, and directly took advantage of him, forcing him to become a relative. Later, when Gu Yi refused his request for pleasure, Xiaojiao struggled and injured his head, restoring his past memories. He remembered his past background and resolutely practiced the heartless technique of the Great Way. At this point, his personality changed greatly, and the fate of Gu Yi can be imagined. Although Gu Junshi doesn't like to read the messy literature online, her era is characterized by advanced online information. Even if you don't pay special attention, you can know that the male protagonists in TV dramas or anime novels are jokingly referred to as Dragon Proud Heaven. Unlike her boss who works tirelessly day and night to expand his business, the little spoiled husband with a greatly changed personality should be called Lu Jiang Fusheng. He was born as the chosen son of heaven, with a hidden and powerful background and the most advanced physical configuration. Along the way, he can eliminate all powerful obstacles with the help of unfathomable luck. He complied with fate, saved the righteous cause, and accumulated a lot of merits. Various beauties from the demon world, and cultivation world, including Hongyan Muqiang, followed him. They had a lot of like-minded life and death friends, and finally, with the merciless technique of the Great Road, he killed his wife and proved his way, successfully conquering the immortal path, becoming the first person in the cultivation world to soar for 1,000 years. After waking up, Gu Junshi did not fully believe everything in his dream, even though it was truly true and logically coherent, with clear pulse and characters. It was not until the appearance of Jiang Daoran, the leader of the 6 crimson floating immortal path, similar to the scene in her dream, that she had to believe that this might be a premonitory dream. So, did she dress up as the cannon fodder that was ultimately proven by the son of the heavenly way who killed his wife? However, she was not the same Gu Yi as before, so from the moment she arrived, everything set in the plot began to derail. She did not force Lu Jiang Fusheng to marry her, he was willing, so he did not restore his memory on the wedding night. Without restoring his memory, he naturally did not practice the Great Way of merciless technique, but instead immersed himself in ordinary married life. No wonder she kept being reborn back to this day. It turned out that she had taken away the destiny that little Jiao should have, and the destiny wanted to rectify the situation. Gu Yi is the first stepping stone bestowed by the heavenly Tao upon Lu Jiang Fusheng to enter the realm of cultivation, a tool person destined to die in the hands of Lu Jiang Fusheng. And with the same cultivation method, Lu Jiang Fusheng only needs to kill her wife to prove her way, cut off the bonds of this mortal marriage and completely transform and ascend. However, she has an additional threshold that must be achieved. Now, thinking about it. This is simply a difficult problem intentionally set by the heavenly Tao to prevent her from ascending. Gu Junshi is not someone who looks at high mountains and fears difficulties while retreating. On the contrary, she particularly enjoys challenges and climbing. It's okay, although Lu Jiang Fusheng was escorted by the heavenly Tao, she wasn't the original Gu Yi. Let's see who the heavenly Dao and she are the ultimate winners of this laugh. Remembering the incident last night when Lu Jiang accidentally rolled the sheets, which made her fair and delicate face blush, he sat on the collapsed bed holding the bedding, but his pupils were twisted and dark. Suddenly, he didn't want to simply kill Gu Junshi. She doesn't know anything now, killing her is just a fleeting pleasure, but he wants her to experience being betrayed by her lover like him, and die in despair in the cold and pain. Gu Junshi was not in the room early in the morning. She often woke up and disappeared for a few hours like this, and Lu Jiangfusheng became accustomed to it. He got up from the bed and after washing up, he saw a plate of brightly colored fruits on the table, which should have been freshly picked and still stained with crystal clear dew. Gu Junshi never loves eating crispy fruits, but because he loves them, whenever she goes out and comes back in the morning, she will pick some for him. He glanced twice, then pursed his lips tightly, ungratefully preparing to go down to work. But halfway through, he froze. Why does he have to work hard to support the woman who has been killing him? So he angrily turned back, only to see Gu Junshi packing his bags with a posture of going on a long journey. His heart thumped in panic. What are you doing? He stood by the door with gloomy eyes, his delicate face pale, and his fingertips almost dug into the wood. She opened the wardrobe and picked, "It's time to leave here." So, this time she showed great kindness and chose not to kill him, but decided to completely abandon him. She is really ruthless. He asked with a wooden face, "Where are you going?" "Cultivate immortality." Xiaojiao. Lu Jiang was stunned for a moment. He was not as unbelievable as others would hear immortal Xiaojiao. He approached her and slowly surrounded her with warmth from behind. His wet breath came from his ear, and the corners of his eyes were slightly red with an indescribable charm. His blood-red thin lips spat out words of grievance, saying, "Are you leaving like this? Do you not want this home, and do you not want me?" He told himself that his heart would ache, not because of the loss and sadness she had abandoned. It was just because he was sick and she wanted to leave him alone. He had to break her tendons and keep her captive in his sight, so that his illness could heal. Licking his lips, he seemed to taste a sweet and fishy taste. Gu Junshi's movement of tidying up her clothes was embraced by him, and she couldn't move for a moment. She turned her head and said, "How could you think that? Naturally, wherever we go, our home is there. So, she never intended to leave him alone." Jiaofu was slightly stunned, her mood improved a lot, but in the next moment, it became colder again. Scammer, he won't trust her anymore. He gave her a bright and innocent soft smile and said, He thought to himself, cultivating immortality. If he, as a mortal, could not kill her, perhaps there would be a turning point in going with her to cultivate immortality. But ordinary people cannot reach the realm of cultivation. What should we do? Lu Jiangfusheng has also heard stories about cultivating immortals. Ordinary people are located in the 66 realms, lacking spiritual power and unable to cultivate immortals, while the cultivation realm is within 1 to 28 levels of heaven. Those who cultivate immortals there are called real people. To reach the cultivation realm from the mortal realm, real people need to use spiritual energy to open the barriers between the two realms. Gu Junshi had already made a plan. Go find Taoist Jiang. There, I still need him, that's why I brought him along. Lu Jiangfusheng is willing to speculate on Gu Junshi's thoughts with the greatest malice. He hesitated and said, Jiang Taoist. But it's been 2 days since then, and I don't know if anyone else has left. It's okay to leave. Holding his hand, Gu Junshi was in front, and the calm and composed voice always filled one's heart with a sense of security. She didn't even know how many times she had repeated her cultivation. For her now, it was like returning to the beginner's village after reaching full level. However, in the past, she was accustomed to practicing alone, and this time she had an extra little mistress by her side. So, let's start over in a different way. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. You are crazy and marry her. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. You are crazy and marry her. After packing up their necessary items, Lu Jiangfusheng consciously picked up his bag and stood by the door, while Gu Junshi took out a copper lock, lowered the door latch, and locked it again. This dilapidated single-room mud-walled thatched cottage seems to have gained a bit of prestige due to its golden and newly forged copper locks. Lu Jiang, who had entered the Gu family, always believed that the couple were equally poor, and even faced the bleak situation of starving to death one day when they worked tirelessly. But now, as Gu Junshi casually pulled out an expensive Pisces-wide lock, he suddenly felt that he had paid the wrong amount for all the hard work and sweat he had done before, facing the yellow earth and facing the sky. I.e. As soon as we leave, the most valuable thing in this room is probably this copper lock. Gu Junshi stared at the lock and pondered for a while. The villagers of Xiaojiao are simple and honest, and no one will steal the lock. Lu Jiangfusheng's eyes turned and he said, if Gu comes back, he shouldn't be able to enter the door. Gu, his original younger brother, was said by the villagers to be exceptionally intelligent from a young age. He was handsome and hard-working, and had taken on the heavy burden of the family since his parents died. He never complained and raised a lazy sister who was 5 years older than him. About a few months ago, he was favored by the people of the cultivation sect for his talent and qualifications, and was taken away from the mortal world. Everyone said that Gu was tired of taking care of the lazy sister all the time, so he abandoned Gu and left alone. As Gu Junshi had no memory of Gu, he was unaware of the details. She has been in the cultivation world for thousands of years, but has never heard of a person named Gu. He either lingers in the lower level of silence and namelessness, or dies too early to become famous. Gu Junshi did not rest assured about this younger brother, even though he knew he was in the cultivation world, he did not specifically inquire about him. He won't come back, she said. Lu Jiangfusheng saw her cold attitude towards Gu, her younger brother, and knew that this person probably didn't hold much place in her heart. He was somewhat disappointed that Gu was not her weakness, but couldn't suppress the secret joy that he had suppressed in his heart. I.e. What's wrong? The two left Xiaojiao village together. The field was misty and rainy. After the wheat harvest, the bean sprouts in the field were about feet high. Many farming villagers in the green fields were busy in the bend. Further ahead was a wild lotus pond. The heavy rain for several days made the water full and high. The lotus leaf green rainstorm washed and soaked, and the green sprouted and stacked one after another. Once he leaves the cramped interior and arrives at the vast and spacious world filled with rain and dew, he has a feeling of living in the real world. Lu Jiang floated in a daze. Is everything he experienced before just a nightmare? Can her merciless gaze and merciless indifference be a dream? He carried a bundle on his back, while she held him. At first, he would tremble with fear from her approach, and even now he was trying to restrain his instinctive stiffness. I.e., if one day you suddenly want to kill me, what will it be for? Gu Junshi's expression suddenly froze, he slowly turned his head and gazed at him thoughtfully. Why? Do you think I want to kill you? Does he have memories of being killed before? This should be impossible, because his reaction was wrong. If he knew she had killed him so many times, there would only be two reactions. One was to kill her to seek revenge, and the other was to run away in fear, but he did neither. But I can't say for sure. Her tone was still warm and pleasant, but Lu Jiangfusheng felt a strong sense of danger. He realized that he had relaxed his mind for a moment and asked such a foolish question. No, I was just talking nonsense because I had a dream before. A very scary dream. His light brown pupils were dilated, and he bit his lower lip tightly, blood droplets oozing out and staining his lips red. At this moment, one hand caressed and lifted his lower jaw, forcing him to separate his ravaged and swollen lips. She thought for a moment and said to him, if one day I kill you, it must be because I love you. Before that, she won't touch him again. Bang, he felt his brain suddenly explode, with hot blood rushing into his heart. He suddenly lifted his face and looked at her dumbfounded. What are you saying? Gu Junshi looked at him seriously, his eyes as black as an abyss, as if they could only accommodate him. If I kill you one day, I must have fallen in love with you. So. Those of her before, she killed him because she fell in love with him. What kind of nonsense is this? So, when he was reborn this time, she didn't kill him by chance or with another intention, but because she hadn't fallen in love with him yet. But. Why? He blushed and looked at her with a look that was about to cry. Why is all this? Why does she fall in love with him and he must die? Lu Jiangfusheng didn't understand, he just felt that this reason was both absurd and ridiculous. But this time, Gu Junshi did not answer. She silently watched him for a long time and continued to hold him, saying, "Let's go." And along the way, the two of them felt like they were in a cold war, holding a distance and no longer talking to each other, just a pair of clasped hands that seemed to have forgotten and never separated. They walked to the Qingshe Bridge in the Lotus Pond, where the gentle mist and rain were woven like mist by the wind. In the pond, the willow shadows swayed and danced against the wind. Sure enough, there was someone waiting there, but their way of waiting was somewhat different. He was short, thin, and shriveled. He wore an oversized blue-dyed white-collar Taoist robe and sat cross-legged on the narrow railing of the Qingshe Bridge. He wore a bamboo hat on his head, propped up his chin, and bit on a piece of hay. He was bored and closed his eyes to nourish his mind. The wind and rain swayed, but it blew all around him and stopped him. It evaporated like a light mist. With this skill alone, it can be seen that he is an extraordinary expert. Is that him? Gu Junshi asked. Lu Jiangfusheng said, "It's him." She nodded and wanted to come forward, but suddenly she thought for a moment and asked Xiaojiao to go first. "You go ask him." "What are you asking?" "Ask about his identity and what he knows about you. Aren't you with me?" He looked at her with clear black and white eyes. Gu Junshi shook his head and said, "He's waiting for you. You guys talk alone first, and then I'll go over." So Lu Jiangfusheng obediently went alone to meet people. But before he could get on the bridge, the voice of the old Taoist came from under the bamboo hat. "Kid, have you made up your mind?" At this moment, Lu Jiang's floating and beautiful face had no expression. He asked directly, "Who are you?" Jiang Taoist rolled and landed in front of him, using one finger to support the pressed bamboo hat, revealing an old face that appeared somewhat pointed due to protruding cheekbones. He frowned at him and chuckled obscenely, "I am the leader of the 13th Heavenly Great Yen Sect's Malus Mountain. If you are willing to follow me, you will be my 7th disciple." Lu Jiangfusheng's gaze swept over his bald eyebrows, thinking that this title truly lived up to its name. "Wumei Mountain Master, why do you want me to be your disciple?" "I have said." He squinted his eyes and spoke in a mysterious and deep tone, "I see from your face that you are destined to have extraordinary opportunities in this life, and in the future." Suddenly, he casually scanned the woman following behind him in his spare time. Her mysterious and enigmatic demeanor instantly broke through her skills, and her narrow eyes widened in astonishment. "Okay. What a captivating aura that dominates the world. Who is she?" Taoist Jiang changed his tone and asked in a tight voice. Lu Jiang frowned and took a step to block his line of sight. His tone was somewhat sarcastic. "My wife." The Taoist Jiang was surprised and said, "What, you're married?" Immediately after, he reacted and impatiently slapped his thigh. "You're crazy, how dare you marry her?" End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Ordinary yet confident. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Ordinary yet confident. Lu Jiangfusheng gave him a lukewarm glance, his pale brown pupils squinting slightly like glass. Can't I achieve the goal of being alone for a lifetime? Jiang Taoist choked, he didn't mean that either. I want to explain, but I don't know where to start. He, a Taoist from Jiang, is known as the ancestor of physiognomy. He has seen countless people, and at first glance, he knows that their marriage is shallow and their fate clashes with each other. Observing the woman, she is dignified and majestic, with a forehead and a divine aura. Her eyes are like the autumn moon, bright and clear, and she is usually a blessed man. If she is a woman, she will produce a demon. On the other hand, observing the man carries the destiny of fate, with a root that is upright and red. When this demon meets, it will be a battle between dragons and tigers, and there will be a wound. He blushed and had a thick neck, feeling a little guilty when talking behind his back. So he leaned his hand against his mouth and whispered, she's not a good person. Jiaofu paused. Thinking to himself, he had already known, but unfortunately, he had already boarded the thief's ship. It was too late to advise now. He didn't want to continue the topic, so he flickered his starry eyes and asked, if I were to be your disciple, could you make me stronger than anyone else? Seeing the young man looking at him with expectant eyes like spring and snow, it immediately aroused the ambitious spirit of Taoist Jiang. Of course. Upon hearing about his plan, Taoist Jiang excitedly rubbed his palms and circled, young man, have you ever heard of the ascent of cultivation? He blinked his thick eyelashes and nodded lightly, I've heard of it. The old Taoist took a deep breath, his eyes full of meaning, and spoke in a mysterious language that traversed the past, present, and future. If it were you, perhaps in time, you would be the only person to become an immortal for 1,000 years. Lu Jiang Fusheng was somewhat stunned at the words. Is he so powerful? At this moment, a playful chuckle came from behind, and Gu Junshi walked gracefully towards him, saying, do you still have the ability to teach people to ascend to immortality? The Taoist Jiang's face changed and he looked angry and embarrassed, saying, ignorant child. Gu Junshi raised his eyebrows lightly and said, I'm afraid even Huang Shou, Nanyuan Shangzuan, and the Buddha of Maha Zen Temple dare not exaggerate their words like this. The old Taoist paused for a moment, then pointed at her and exclaimed, You village woman, how do you know about the cultivation world? The few people she mentioned are all famous figures in the cultivation world. They are high-level true beings in their 20s, and their cultivation level is far above him. Gu Junshi had never heard of the name Jiang Taoist before, but she had heard of the Dayan sect because there were several characters who rose to the top of this small sect in the later period. Are all village women ignorant and ignorant? Gu Junshi's deep pool eyes seemed to be able to probe people's hearts. The old Taoist's eyes widened and he opened his mouth, speechless. Seeing her own farmer's wife blocking the previously arrogant old Taoist with just a few words, Lu Jiang's beautiful eyes dimmed, and she couldn't help but feel greatly disappointed. Does he really want to worship this old Taoist as his teacher? He looks not very smart, can he really teach him to succeed and successfully kill his wife? Jiang Dao flipped the hat off his head with great enthusiasm and said, who the hell are you? I really think he's stupid. She can't just be an ordinary village woman. Gu Junshi wanted to say, I am a person who should be honored as the ancestor by the leaders of your Dayan sect. However, when I think about my past status and honor, she is still a common person with a flat head. So, in the future, you may have to bow and kowtow 3 times before you can meet someone. She only told the truth, but it made both of them dumbfounded. Grass. Too arrogant. Tatima is so infuriating. The breath around Jiang Taoist's body was like a blazing flame, and his wide long-sleeved robe was blowing in the wind. It was as if he could slap this arrogant peasant woman to the ground. Lu Jiang Fusheng was overwhelmed by the old Taoist's authority and couldn't catch her breath. However, when she saw that the old Taoist was about to attack Gu Junshi, she opened her arm in front of her without even thinking about it. Her slightly pale face was filled with a cold expression of unwillingness to back down. Upon seeing this, the Taoist Jiang silently recited in his heart in front of his future disciple, enduring a momentary anger. He took a step back and regained his momentum, stomping his feet and shouting, "I won't tell you, kid, will you leave?" Lu Jiangfusheng changed her expression and turned around innocently to ask Gu Junshi for his opinion. She gave him a deep glance and said, "Let's go naturally." "What's bothering you?" the old Taoist exclaimed angrily. "He is my husband, so naturally we are husband and wife." Jiang Taoist sneered and impolitely dug out his ear, saying, "Fart it off." After cultivating immortality, he has a long history. You, as an ordinary wife, should have broken ties with him. I will accompany him for a long life. He exaggerated and chuckled, "Forever life. Do you think everyone is qualified to cultivate immortality? He dare not guarantee others, but she, he. Is Mr. Ba proud of having 3,000 internal cultivation techniques and tens of thousands of secret strategies for immortality?" "No," she just said calmly, "if I'm not here, he won't go with you." Lu Jiangfusheng, for his revenge plan, naturally would not easily separate from Gu Junshi. He nodded earnestly and said, "Wherever my wife is, I am." Upon hearing the words of his wife and servant, Taoist Jiang glared at him with resentment. What an injustice! The old Taoist wiped his face, his eyes rolled around, and he snorted insincerely, "Okay. Then let's go together. But as for the ugly words, if she doesn't pass the qualification test of the asking immortal stone, she can only be sent back to the mortal world. This is the rule of cultivation, and even the old Taoist has no way to do it." Gu Junshi saw through Jiang Daoist's plan at a glance. She is a waste material with a physical condition that can be easily seen through with his cultivation. The two people across from her looked at her together. She gave a faint smile and stirred up the clear breeze and bright moon, saying, "Sure. Old Taoist slander. Laugh to death, why can she be so confident despite being so ordinary?" 6 crimson flowers float and droop their eyes, while the spring flower eyebrows contemplate gently in vain. If he could become a cultivator while she remains immortal, that would be great. In this way, she could completely become the object of his palm. Play and control, perhaps trample and submit. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Asking Immortal Stone Testing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Asking Immortal Stone Testing. Jiang Taoist predicted that Gu Junshi would not be able to understand the immortal stone, and he couldn't wait to see the scene of this village woman being beaten in the face. "Everyone stand further away." He waved his hand away, then inserted his hand into the empty sleeve. With a flick of his hand, a palm-sized golden compass appeared in his palm. Compass instrument. What is he doing with such a big posture with this little thing? Lu Jiang was puzzled, but was pulled back by Gu Junshi without a word. I saw Daoist Jiang throwing the compass instrument with a momentum, and it spun and circulated in mid-air, instantly increasing by 100 times. It was like a small golden island floating, with a huge black shadow covering my head, and the light suddenly decreased and dimmed. Lu Jiang looked up and said in a daze, "This is amazing, kid. In the future, your life will be completely overturned. The tides will rise and fall, the moon will rise and fall, the moon will return to its original state, and the 10 months' work will be uninterrupted. There will be supernatural birth and death in one's ingenuity. Ha ha ha. Xiaojiao is good, transforming into a true form and ascending to the great Luo heaven." With a bold smile, Taoist Jiang pulled Lu Jiang and his companions onto the compass, and proudly and skillfully rode away in the wind. The compass is the magical tool of the Jiang Taoist, which can withstand strong winds in the high altitude. However, the tool has the function of protecting oneself from external disturbances. Lu Jiangfusheng stood on top of the golden tool, nervously and excitedly gripping Gu Junshi's hand. His vision suddenly became broad and distant, and a distant isolated city with thousands of towering mountains was crawling at his feet. For the first time, he felt the biggest difference between a cultivator and the mortal world. One person was in the sky, one person was in the abyss, and 10,000 miles were written in his arms. He only felt a majestic and awe-inspiring atmosphere rising from his chest. Do you think the feeling of the 5 sacred mountains and 9 continents all surrendering to your feet is very charming? Suddenly, a question came to your ear. Lu Jiang floated back to her senses and looked at Gu Junshi with a calm expression. It seemed that she had never been moved by anything since he met her. Even in such a heart-wrenching scene for ordinary people at this moment, she seemed to be experiencing a rare and ordinary event. "It's very charming," he said. After hearing his honest answer, Gu Junshi's mouth lit up with an incomprehensible smile. "So to what extent would you do it for such a charming thing?" Lu Jiang looked at her in a daze, feeling that her words contained too many profound meanings that he couldn't understand. The movement speed of such top-notch flying magic tools is beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Soon, they crossed the lower 66 realms and arrived at the barrier between the mortal realm and the cultivation realm. The two realms were intertwined, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was exceptionally strong. The sky was clear, as if filtered out by all kinds of colors, clearing the clear and pure fiber clouds without staining. "We're about to cross the border, you guys stand up." As soon as the Taoist Jiang shook his voice and drank, he took out an 8-foot red flag from the Qianquan bag in his sleeve. Gu Junshi saw him dressed in a Taoist robe, carrying both a compass and a flag, which gave him the posture of a divine stick monk. "Since you want to become a disciple, you should have a good experience of the true abilities of a Yuaning cultivator." She pointed out the true cultivation of Jiang Taoist with one sentence. At this time, Lu Jiang Fusheng was still a novice in the realm of cultivation, and naturally did not understand the distinction between cultivation levels and realms, let alone what Yuaning represented. He just followed Gu Junshi's words and carefully watched Jiang Taoist cast spells. The person who had been joking and cursing with an irritable old man not long ago was now sweeping away the worldly dust and hunting in his robes. He stood on the edge, tearing open the protective barrier, and with a wave of his hand, the 8-foot flag swelled and blew in the air. He grabbed the head of the flag handle, jumped up and down with 1 foot, and the next second had already teleported to mid-air. With a wave of his hand, the flag changed from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, from 4 to 8. Suddenly, a large area of red was painted with a bright and clean sky. He let out a low cry, and his lean body seemed to explode with tremendous energy. The red waves rolled into a raging sea, rushing straight into the boundary barrier. The two collided, and the sky was like a hole, with a huge spiritual torrent pouring down from the waterfall. This scene is truly shocking, at least for Lu Jiang Yasheng. It left an indelible memory. "The barrier has been opened, enter quickly." He turned around and waved, and the three of them turned into a beam of light and rushed into the gradually recovering torrent. The barrier between the mortal world and the cultivation world is a defense line set up by dozens of powerful individuals. It is not easy for ordinary cultivators to open it. Even if a cultivator like Jiang Taoist opens it once, their spiritual power will be exhausted. The panting Jiang Taoist threw the two of them at the entrance of the Dayan sect and quickly asked them to ask the immortal stone for testing. He ran to the side to rest and regain his breath. The 6 crimson floating life has been in a state of being refreshed from the loading of the compass into the cultivation realm to its landing. The Dayan sect is not a very old sect with a long history. It has only been established for a few hundred years, and its cultural heritage cannot be compared to the stunning Guadian Orchid Palace. However, Dayan sect has its unique architectural style. Taking 5 peaks as the platform, it lifts the mountain and floats in the sky, clouds hover around, white cranes fly, smoke, white water, and waterfalls are dimly visible, and the trees on the waterside are covered in the sky. The terraces stacked one by one are arranged in an orderly way, but at first glance they seem to be surrounded by a group, which shows that Dayan's sect has the implication of people are united and Mount Taishan mountain is moved. On a section of stone steps that ascended to the sky, stood a snow-white stone with inch-long cracks. If someone without the ability to cultivate immortality touched it, there would be no response. Only those with spiritual roots could make its patterns as deep as the blue of the blue sea, shining brightly. Fusheng, go test it quickly. Seeing that he had been motionless for a long time, the Taoist Jiyang urged him. He had full confidence in Lu Jiang and appeared somewhat excited because he was too eager for the outcome. But Lu Jiang Fusheng silently pursed his red lips. Although the pain he had experienced, the cycle of ripening, twisted his nature, he was still just a thin and amnestic teenager. Now, this spiritual root test is crucial for him. So he was nervous and also a little scared. If the test later shows that his qualifications are very poor, or he doesn't have the innate talent that the old Taoist thinks, Gu Junshi seemed to see through his thoughts. She held his hand and personally led him step by step up the stone steps that made him timid. Don't worry, although Taoist Jiyang acted recklessly, he didn't lie. Her green hair swayed lightly with a delicate and tender expression before Lu Jiang's eyes. With her words, he seemed to relax in an instant. Do you believe I can? She also wants to know where he, who has been favored by the heavens, can reach. The answer is right in front of you, go ahead. She let go of him and pushed him forward. Lu Jiang Fusheng was pushed to the front of the Wenxian stone, and the stone tools felt a cold chill as they approached. He took a deep breath, not letting himself hesitate or retreat, and with a strong breath, pressed his hand onto the Wenxian stone. Dong dong. Dong dong. Suddenly, from the position touched by his palm as the center, the cracks on the asking immortal stone radiated and shone brightly, 1 inch, 1 zhang. The blue thorn light suddenly spread out in a thin ring shape from the feet of Lu Jiang Fusheng. The blue light was stretched to pure white, and finally the sky was red and dazzling, 1 square and 10 squares bright, and the sky and earth changed color. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Genius and Abandoned Talents. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Genius and Abandoned Talents. Lu Jiang Fusheng's short clothes were blown open by the strong wind, and he covered his face with his arms, struggling to stand still and persevere. At this time, the highest peak of the Dayan sect was the Tianbao Xiongga, where an ancient bronze bell tower was located. In the past, the Dayan sect would only sound the bronze bell as a warning when encountering urgent situations. Since the establishment of the sect, the Zhu Ke bell has only been sounded 3 times. At present, there was no external force, but the Zhu Ke bell shook on its own. The sound of the bell was loud and powerful, loud and long, and could be heard from miles around. The disciples and elders of the sect were all shocked and they heard the bell, and they rushed out to investigate the situation. What's going on? Is there an ancient demon attacking, a landslide or someone knocking on the door? The Dayan sect, all of which are martial arts cultivators, can be considered as the ceiling of the 11-day cultivation world in terms of violence and blood resistance. At the same time, the high-level cultivators of the 28 heavens also sense the energy fluctuations of the asking immortal stone in their own realm. The old monsters who had been secretly practicing in Shimi fantasy realm, Endless Sea, Immortal Qidong, and Maha-Zen Temple suddenly turned pale and went out to investigate the ever-changing celestial phenomena. The asking immortal stone erupts with a brilliant light, and the heavens show signs. There will surely be a genius descending to the world. The Taoist Jiyang, who observed everything nearby, was stunned and said, "Oh my goodness, this is a pure lotus seed at the level of spiritual roots." The general spiritual root level is divided into lower, middle, upper, earth, and heaven. There are many types, including gold, wood, water, fire, soil, and so on. However, rare varieties are more expensive, just like the 6 crimson floating lotus seed, a type of heavenly spirit root that can be cultivated and advanced as one's realm improves. In other words, Xiaojiao's cultivation talent is not just 1 out of 10,000, it is simply 1 out of a million, an unattainable and desirable existence. Gu Junshi was also somewhat taken aback. Ever since she knew what breed of dragon Aotian Xiaojiao was, she guessed that he would either be hitting someone else's face or on his way to hitting someone else's face. What she found in her dream was only an outline without detailed chapters, and her knowledge was limited. Now, with her own eyes, she saw his first step toward success. The people from Dayan's sect who went down the peak saw the movement in front of the mountain gate and rushed to the scene. However, they saw the young man in front of the asking immortal stone wearing a bright blue luster, with a few strands of hair scattered outside, as if a halo had enveloped him. They were all amazed and gathered around him. Oh my goodness, the recent change was because the asking immortal stone detected the existence of the heavenly spirit root. I'm a well-behaved person. There really are people with heavenly spiritual roots in this world. I thought Senior Dan Ya's earthly spiritual roots were already scary enough, but I didn't expect a mountain to be even higher. A female disciple Chong Xiang whispered in amazement, so people with heavenly spirit roots look like this. She is both obedient and soft, as if she is still young this year, with a slightly thin and slender figure. If she grows a few more years, she doesn't know how to look like a stunning person. They gathered together in amazement, watching and commenting around little Jiaofu as a rare breed, while Lu Jiang saw the situation and quickly withdrew his hand. The vision disappeared, and he stood there frowning and uncomfortable. At this moment, Daoist Jiang quickly walked over and, while driving away others, deliberately raised his face and scolded, "Go away, go away. This is my disciple. You, the 7th senior uncle from now on, all pay attention." The disciples of the lower peak bowed when they saw the appearance of the leader of Wumei Mountain. After the ceremony, Wumei Mountain jumped off excitedly like a monkey and said, "Mountain leader, what's the name of the martial uncle? Also, the disciples of Tianlingen are so rare. Are you sure you have won over the leader and other mountain leaders?" The Taoist Jiang angrily said, "Who dares to compete with the old Taoist? I brought him back, so naturally he should send me as his teacher." At this moment, a voice full of vitality came from far to near. "Wu Mei, don't say this too early." The 100 entry-level disciples from the upper peak were all transported to the entrance of the mountain through a teleportation array. Unlike the ordinary disciples in the lower peak, they had a unified sect uniform, with Tsin wearing blue robes and white crowns, exuding an ethereal aura. I saw that the leaders were the 4 mountain masters of the Dayan sect who appeared together. One was the Wuwei mountain master, and all the people on his mountain were steel warriors. The other was the Nianhua mountain master, and all the disciples on her mountain were beautiful women. The other was the purple grass mountain master, who disguised himself as the most refined male disciple of the 5 peaks. The other was the 9 swallow mountain master, who had the least number of people and disguised himself as practicing monsters. As for the disciples of Wumei Mountain, they are the most chaotic and have all kinds of varieties. The disciples of Jiang Taoist also follow his temperament, so there is no certainty. "Wu Wei, you old man, you want to compete with the Taoist for my disciple. What kind of Tao do you cultivate in Wumei Mountain? Face recognition, divination, or setting up a stall in Kanyu? He is so talented that he should enter my path of Wu Wei to cultivate swordsmanship." The Wu Wei mountain master alone has 2 tall and strong members of Jiang Taoist, with a fierce and scarred face, and at first glance, he is ruthless. Exquisite mountain master Xiaojiao has a gentle appearance, but he is a person with a dignified demeanor. He said calmly, "I personally think that judging from his decent appearance, he is from the same lineage as my mountain disciple, so it is better to use Yin Sha." The usually silent 9 swallow mountain master hesitated for a moment and said, "Sword cultivation is also good." At this moment, the Lord of Nianhua Mountain led a group of beautiful female disciples behind her to stand in a row, smiling happily and saying, "Originally, the Lord of this mountain did not accept male disciples, but the heavenly spirit root, which is rare in 1,000 years, can be made an exception." Young disciple, do you want to come to Nianhua Mountain? Shu. How could you use this seductive move? The four male mountain lords expressed contemptuous yet contemptuous snorts towards her at the same time. Pooh, old witch, she has already married a long time ago. Please save this move, said Taoist Jiang, thrusting his waist and laughing heartily. Wife. Everyone present was stunned by this news. After all, Lu Jiang Fusheng looked young. In the cultivation world, like him, a green young man is not wholeheartedly focused on cultivation and striving. When it comes to becoming a Taoist couple, one should be cautious, and most of them are just looking at the right due relationship. Suddenly, the laughter of Taoist Jiang stopped abruptly, as he suddenly remembered the existence of Gu Junshi. At this moment, Lu Jiang, who had never had the opportunity to interject, spoke out, I did get married. This time, IE is with me, and she will also take the introductory test. After speaking, the corners of his eyes slightly raised, and his pure pupils looked in the direction of Gu Junshi. Has his wife also come? They were all curious about who the wife of the heavenly spirit root youth was. Looking around, they saw Gu Junshi, who consciously shielded his presence, standing next to the asking immortal stone at some point and gently placing his hand on it. Is that her wife? Judging from their appearance and temperament, they seem to be a good match, but their appearance is slightly more mature than that of a young and tender boy. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The crowd silently counted. Did she really encounter the asking immortal stone? After waiting for a while, the asking immortal stone finally lit up slightly, and it was as difficult to squeeze as constipation. Compared to the huge scale caused by the previous 6 crimson floating life, it was simply heartbreaking. This is just a useless spiritual root. Unexpectedly, the young man of Tianlingen married a wife of the deposed Ling Zhen. While sympathizing, he coldly analyzed that their relationship could only be stopped here. Lu Jiang lowered her face and curled up a sweet and eerie curve at the corner of her mouth. It seems that her test failed. At this moment, Taoist Jiang hugged his stomach and laughed wildly like he was seeking revenge. Ha ha ha, have you seen it? You. Gu Junshi remained indifferent to everything around her. Her fingertips curled slightly, and a faint smile appeared on her lips. However, she saw that even the last faint light of the asking immortal stone had been swallowed up. On the contrary, the cracks on its jade-white stone gradually expanded, clicking, clicking. The almost imperceptible sound of toothache spreading and cracking inside. In the end, the immortal stone in her hand exploded in agony. Bang, the gravel smashed all over the ground, and dust and smoke roared up, leaving everything silent. The Taoist Jiang remained silent like a cold cicada, his eyes staring as if they were about to fall out. Sleeping trough. Ask Immortal Stone, how could the special MD crack? Lu Jiang Fusheng suddenly raised her eyes and her expression froze on her face. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Leader of Dayan Sect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Leader of Dayan Sect. A fierce scream rang out, and Taoist Jiang surrounded the wreckage that had fallen from the asking immortal stone, anxiously spinning around. What should we do? What should we do? Why did our asking immortal stone shatter? The mountain master of Dayan's sect and the disciples inside the sect were also dumbfounded by this scene. What is the immortal stone? It is a 32-fold extraterrestrial meteorite in the upper realm. It is said that the immortal stone, which cannot even be shattered by the soaring thunder of the crossing robbery, was unexpectedly shattered by a single touch. The Lord of Wufeng Mountain has a face that is shattered and disordered, and the soul of the 6 gods without a master. Oh no, this matter is far more urgent than the robbery incident. They were shocked and rushed to Gu Junshi's face. The Taoist Jiang angrily broke his voice and said, "What did you do to the asking immortal stone?" The other 4 mountain masters also stared at her with stern and sharp eyes. These 5 were at worst in the later stage of the golden elixir. Once they exerted pressure, not to mention ordinary people with no cultivation, even the foundation-building cultivators may not be able to bear it. Gu Junshi is now barely a mortal fetus, with a few spiritual pressures suddenly added to her body. She forcefully pressed her shoulders, almost breaking her scapula. Ha! She darkened her eyes and was about to move, but she heard a thunderous roar that startled the clouds. Who dares to destroy my mountain gate and ask the immortal stone? I saw a figure driving away the flying clouds and mist. He hung high in the sky, reflecting under the scorching sun. The golden light blended with his red flame, phoenix and dragon weaving brocade, making people feel dazzling everywhere. The crowd blinked, swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and bowed down to greet each other, saying, "Greetings, master." This is the end of the game. Their perverted and mischievous leader was blown out by this couple. At first glance, Gu Junshi was somewhat inexplicably familiar with this voice, but that person never spoke in such a male rough and straightforward voice. He had a tone that was very annoying, and she thought she had misunderstood him. But when she looked around, she saw a tall man falling down gracefully. He was wearing a dark red and complex sea-tied robe that covered his feet, his waist was like a snake, and his eyebrows and eyes were slender. Even though his anger was blazing, he still had an indecent demonic aura. Gu Junshi. Where in life doesn't we meet? Is it really him? Wei Li, a 9-tailed fox with 2 severed tails, had been obsessed with her for decades in a certain life. However, after encountering her ruthlessly killing the slaughtering faction without objection, she cried and was scared away with tears in her eyes. Did he actually serve as the leader of the Dayan sect before being beheaded? You really can't judge a person by their appearance. Wei Li took a deep breath and stared blankly at the scattered rubble on the ground. She thought that in order to create the sect, he had almost wiped out the Fox clan's family, so he had to buy a piece from the demon butcher in the 28th heavenly immortal cave to decorate his facade. Now that the money was gone and the asking immortal stone was also destroyed, he was so heartbroken that Shizi held his heart in his arms, his slightly red eyes glistening with tears, and he was about to cry. To let him know who did it, he dug out his heart and chewed it into his stomach one by one. "Master, it's her." After she touched the asking immortal stone, it inexplicably exploded. As soon as the Dayan sect saw him in a state of sorrow, his hair stood on end. His disciples panicked and all pointed to Gu Junshi, quickly pointing out the main culprit to take responsibility. The boss referred to by the husbands did not expect to encounter Jiao here. He has always been mentally ill, so it is better to have less interaction with him. Therefore, her original words and plans changed. She deliberately avoided looking at him and said calmly, "I am just an ordinary mountain and rural woman. You should be able to see. How can I, who has no spiritual roots, destroy the asking immortal stone of your sect?" Wei Li's fox pupils stood straight and looked at her dangerously, with a hint of killing intent in his slightly silver eyes. At first glance, he knew she was a useless spiritual root, but he never minded indiscriminately killing innocent people. Obviously, Lu Jiang Fusheng also realized the seriousness of the matter. His ebony black pupils tightened, he bit his red lips, and couldn't help but speak up to defend her. "It's not her, this immortal stone exploded on its own." Explosion. Wei Li angrily lifted his eyes and smiled. He raised his arm, and his windless and swaying wide-sleeved robe shot out countless cold golden threads, with sharp needles and tiny hairs, posing a dangerous danger. "You're lying to ghosts. What is the immortal stone? Even if you use an immortal weapon to bombard it, it can't break a single layer of skin. Can you tell me it explodes on its own?" Taoist Jiang's face suddenly changed, and he quickly rushed forward to pull Lu Jiang Fusheng behind him. He scratched his head and ears and urged, "Master, be cold and calm. Since the asking immortal stone can't even destroy immortal weapons, this mortal little woman is even worse. And this is the heavenly spirit root disciple I just received from the lower world, and he is also a pure lotus seed. With his talent, he will definitely become a glory in our Dayan sect's participation in the new list of cultivating immortals for 100 years in the future. He emphasized the importance of clarifying the heavenly spirit root and the newcomer list, making sure that this greedy leader does not let their Dayan sect continue to be ridiculed by other sects for hundreds of years due to a momentary impulse. Wei Li squinted her eyes and stared at the weak and delicate young man who dared to choke with him, like a small white flower, still with a murderous intent. The other mountain masters also held their breath tightly. Yes, that's right. His name is Fushan, and his destiny chart is the 9 Yao Emperor star. The old Taoist never miscalculated. Jiang Taoist blushed and spoke confidently. Wei Li raised her eyebrows, her thick and shiny long hair hanging on her shoulders, emitting a faint light. After weighing the pros and cons in her heart, she reluctantly and wrongfully slapped her back. A cold and sickly beam of light shot down, and from 100 meters away, there was a thunderous roar. The earthquake shook the mountain, and the dust and mist boiled up. A small hill with undulating smoke and green was then annihilated and flattened. Everyone's gaze shifted from far to near, hesitating and froze, their faces turning pale. Grass, scared the baby to death. Lu Jiang Fusheng also witnessed for the first time the magnificent scene of a cultivator's ability to destroy the sky and earth with just one move. The gust of wind swept his clothes and hair, causing his black pupils to stagnate slightly and his hands and feet to tingle. Although he should have been both shocked and scared, for some reason his heart was filled with excitement and madness. It was like a knife cutting open his chest and taking out a scorching heart, shouting that one day he would also stand at the peak like him, taking away life and death. Wei Li naturally knew that this asking immortal stone could be destroyed with just a touch of a useless spiritual root, but other people would be fine if touched, and if she touched it, it would cause trouble. Her hands smelled and she dared to touch other people's belongings randomly. He was angry, but his nose was sharp enough to catch a wisp of dead energy in the broken bones of the asking immortal stone. He quickly opened his eyes and sniffed carefully again. That's right, it's lifeless. How can there be stillness in the spiritual realm? He was filled with fear and uncertainty in his heart. Is it the ancient demon or ghost cultivator who destroyed the asking immortal stone? The male characters depicted in this article are mostly villains, either suffering from minor illnesses or serious illnesses, refusing to take medicine, and also setting up a private setting to fly around. However, the level of cultivation follows the orthodoxy. Foundation building, golden pill, elemental baby, exiting the body, distraction, combination, emptiness, Mahayana, and crossing tribulations. Under the mortal realm, there is a lack of spiritual power in the 66 realms. The cultivation realm lasts for 1 to 28 days, with each layer being filled with spiritual power and even more powerful cultivators. In addition, there are 32 days in the immortal realm, and further up is the true divine realm. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Fox-shaped soul lock curse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Fox-shaped soul lock curse. Gu Junshi knew that Jiao was either using his crooked brain or discovering something when he saw Jiao's erect ears, nose, and narrow eyes twirling. Did you notice that the stagnant energy inside the asking immortal stone is about to dissipate? A hint of dark smile flashed in her eyes. It is said that the 9-tailed fox can only reach adulthood at 1,000 years old. It is born with the ability to connect yin and yang, possesses the body of 9 lives, and can sense the breath of the underworld. Unfortunately, his temperament and connotation are extremely lacking. After all, he is still a few hundred-year-old underage 9-tailed fox who forcibly transforms humans with a secret treasure. He is spoiled to the extreme within the fox tribe and has never looked up to her as a mortal since her appearance. He probably considered all the suspicious objects and wouldn't focus his attention on her. With a roll of fiery phoenix red-sleeved robe, Wei Li collected all the scattered tons of gravel from the ground into the Qianquan bag, and the spirit world reappeared, lifeless, 500 years later. This matter is not insignificant, even foxes like him who only know how to lick their fur and do nothing need to investigate to be at ease. As expected by Gu Junshi, he had never considered her at all. He was already convinced that this was definitely a precursor to some evil sect preparing to stir up a bloody storm. You don't need to worry about the matter of asking about the immortal stone. As for the spiritual roots on this day. Wei Li glanced at Lu Jiangfusheng with a picky gaze, but with arrogance and satisfaction, she said, "The Lord of Wumei Mountain is good at cultivating students. We must urge him to practice diligently and strive to meet the minimum standards to participate in the centenary newcomer list with Dayan 3 years later." Good control, good control. I will definitely take note of the leader's earnest advice. As soon as Taoist Jiang heard the leader directly assign someone to his subordinates, he happily responded. The other mountain lords were filled with regret, and only then did the Wumei mountain master step forward. Now, this rare single seedling has been planted on the top of someone else's mountain. As for this mortal, he was accustomed to being stingy and greedy for treasures. Whenever he mentioned Gu Junshi, he would remember the fact that his sect's asking immortal stone was gone. He directly pinched a magic spell and hit her in the face. A small flame burned and dissipated, leaving a red mark with the word "fox" on it. Gu Junshi felt a burning and painful sensation on her cheek. She instinctively wanted to reach out and touch it, but was first grabbed by Lu Jiangfusheng. She looked up and saw that the word "fox" had turned red in his eyes. He slowly turned his head, his pitch-black eyes fixed on Wei Li like devouring ghosts. How dare. Gu Junshi's expression stiffened. Before Wei Li could even notice Xiaojiao's gaze, he put one hand around his waist, exerted force in his palm, and pressed him against her. The other hand lightly covered his paranoid and murderous eyes. She knows Wei Li to some extent. He has always been arrogant and extreme, and will never allow others to provoke him with such eyes. In the future, Long Aotian will still be a small white flower, as weak as a seedling, unable to withstand any wind and rain. She said calmly, "Husband, I'm fine." Lu Jiang flapped her eyelash brush and slid it over her palm, gently shaking her head. Her soft voice was trembling. "He hurt you." On the surface, he felt heartbroken and pitiful, but on the inside, he was hysterical. It's his, Gu Junshi. Can only be his Lu Jiang floating life alone. Why should the leader of the Dayan sect imprint his own disgusting and dirty marks on his people? Why should he? It's okay, it's not painful anymore. Lu Jiang swallowed the rusty blood surging in his throat, and after forcibly calming down, he pulled down the hand she was covering. When he opened his eyes, the bright autumn water eyes blinked lightly, rippling like the blue waves of the sea, but when he gazed at them, it was like the stagnant Black Sea. But he wouldn't just let it go. Wei Li glanced at the couple with a slanted gaze and a soft snort. Our sect does not accept the waste spirit route, but she will stay at the lower peak as a servant until everything is confirmed. He acted decisively and decisively, never taking a serious look at Gu Junshi, the woman he had admired in his past life. After Wei Li left, Taoist Jiang walked over slowly. He glanced at the prominent mark on Gu Junshi's face and sighed, "This is a soul-locking spell. Even if it's thousands of miles away, as long as you use this spell, it will directly make your soul run wild and you won't even have a chance to reincarnate." Lu Jiangfusheng clenched her palm and said, "How can we solve this? Others can't solve it, this is the exclusive spell of the sect leader." Taoist Jiang shook his head and then waved his hand. His thin palm slid down a finger's distance from her face. Upon closer inspection, the spot where the spell was imprinted on Gu Junshi's face was already pristine. Lu Jiang was taken aback for a moment and then exclaimed in surprise, "It's gone. Is it resolved?" Jiang Daoren coughed in a clear voice and avoided his overly clear and bright eyes. This is just a cover-up, at least in this way. She doesn't have to constantly be looked at by others. He said this couple was both brought back by him from the lower world. Now, a proud son of heaven who is about to become a member of the Dayan sect and is fully cultivated, the future is limitless. However, one of them has to work as a laborer in the lower peak, and the future is destined to be nothing but mediocre and mediocre human waste. The vastly different situation between them makes even he can't help but feel a little resentful and lament for her. Gu Junshi couldn't see it, so she touched her face. There was a rough and uneven surface that looked like scabs, with a hint of prickling on her hand. However, no one knew that this evil spell was a great tonic for her, just waiting for her to refine it. It's okay, I won't run away or do anything that would harm the Dayan sect, so the leaders shouldn't have a reason to force me to die, she said with a harmless and calm expression, but deep in her pupils, it was like a whirlpool of darkness. However, the Taoist Jiang thought to himself that their sect leader's cultivation is indeed impressive, but this person's actions cannot be inferred from common sense. He knows if he will suddenly rise up and want to see a scene of people exploding blood mist and fireworks, but he comforted himself by saying, yes, these days you should abide by the rules and regulations. When the sect leader finds out that the matter of asking the immortal stone has nothing to do with you, the old Taoist will go and beg the sect leader for mercy on your behalf, asking him to help you solve this soul-locking curse. Lu Jiangfusheng understood that unlocking the soul curse still depends on the master. Jiaofu's eyes were sparkling with a thin color, and she assured her confidently, i.e., don't worry. I will definitely try to remove the curse mark on your face, and I won't let you stay at the lower peak as a servant. But Gu Junshi didn't take these words too seriously. He just remembered something and reminded him, my matter is not urgent, you should protect yourself on the mountain. Jiaofu is puzzled, why is she still worried about him even in such times? He stared into her eyes for a moment, thinking that she was just trying to hold on, but there was really no falsehood or coercion inside. Even if she was found to be a useless spiritual root and could never cultivate immortality, and then encountered unexpected disasters and life and death that others could manipulate at will, transforming from a free body to the lowest level of mortal servant in the cultivation world, her husband and she were in completely different situations. Faced with these huge changes and differences that could destroy a person's strong will, would she really not be angry, disappointed, resentful, or jealous? Does she really have a heart? He felt very disappointed because he did not expect her loss of composure to occur, and he still did not find a weakness to overcome from her. Although she didn't know why she thought he needed to be careful at Wumei Mountain, Jiaofu remained gentle and said, okay. Gu Junshi knew that according to the original plot, he would soon encounter the understanding second female and the chivalrous third female, and win the favor of the two women. However, due to the high popularity of these two women in the sect and his momentary popularity, he would inevitably suffer various framing and scheming, and also encounter a powerful and dark enemy. Dayan. The original text states that he acted decisively, without taking a serious look at Gu Junshi, a woman whom he had admired in his past life. Therefore, in the end, he cried rhythmically when he was abused =PS. The first shift is still at 7 o'clock in the morning, and there will be the second shift at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. End of this chapter.